Mrs. Reyes. Might as well. I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page. But we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay. Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out, till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay. Red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Chris. No, I'm kidding. Chris is not here this morning. We'll miss him, love him, but I'm filling in for him. And as always, I got the man, the myth, the legend, Mo Betta, NBA 24/7. How you feeling this morning, Mo?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. Hey, look, if Chris is not going to be here, then what better person to have rocking than the NFL genius, Gene Walzak himself? So I'm good.
Well, Cottrell would be better. Cottrell's
awesome as well. Let's keep it 100. Cottrell's a bad man.
I can think of a lot of people to be better, but you're stuck with me this morning. I'm kidding. You're stuck with me this morning. I'm ready to have a great time. There's a good NBA game last night. We got to preview another NBA game tonight. We got a lot on the docket today. And by the way, I feel like maybe I didn't shower. Maybe it was something of that nature. But Will has abandoned us also. Apparently, he has work. Like, what is it about me, guys? What is it about me?
There must be something in the air.
But I feel great this morning. And I'm ready to talk some. I'm ready to talk some wire to wire. I'm ready to talk some sports. Apparently, he is. Look at me screwing up already. But all right, let's get rolling. First topic's got to be about last night. Celtics Pacers. You want to talk about an opportunity missed? We're watching that game last night at the field, right? We had a softball game. We had the game on the field. Like we're watching, we're nuts. Me and Shally are watching the game on a TV that's at the softball field. And we're like, yo, Indiana's going to win this game. They're going to make a series out of this. They're going to steal one in the Garden, game one, take home court advantage, and let Boston know that they're in for a series. And the turnover down the stretch, not being able to inbound the basketball, has been a thing, in my opinion, in this NBA playoffs. You've seen it in Philadelphia with Tyrese Maxey, and you've seen it rear its ugly head last night with, the pass in. And I don't know about you, right? My question I want to ask you is, did it feel like Pascal Siakam, it's been in the moment so many times with Toronto, just felt like the moment was too big for him? I don't think he's ever been the leader on a team in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I just felt like Indiana outcoached him all game, right? All game. And in the last minute, they decided to just lose their lunch. Mo, I'll ask your question. I'll ask you what did you see? We'll talk about the whole game in a minute, but what did you see in that final sequence between the turnover and then not fouling? And we'll talk about that obviously a little bit later. On the Jaylen Brown double clutch three-pointer from the corner. What's your thought on that?
Look, on the turnover, first of all, Siakam took a horrible angle. You're a veteran player. He took a horrible angle and made something that should have been an easy pass into a difficult pass. And then he let the guy run through him to be able to get to the ball. I just thought, like you said, a veteran player, maybe the moment got to him, but you've got to secure that basketball. I was thinking about what you said about the Philly series as well, and you wonder, they don't really practice the way they did back in the day, and you wonder how many NBA teams actually practice late game inbounding the ball, because I'm starting to think that less and less even deal with it, or maybe they don't expect they have to deal with it in those kind of situations. But that was such a big play. Boston was dead in the water. If Indiana inbounds the ball, it's a free throw shooting contest. They win the game. They're going to win the game. And that hurt, but the game's not over yet, right? They're not done. They're still up 3. In the huddle, I have to assume Rick Carlisle is saying foul right away, immediately, foul right away. And for him, and mind you, Jaylen Brown didn't get a clean look. He caught the ball. He had to gather himself and raise up to shoot that. He could have been fouled multiple times. So I did not understand that way of thinking at all. And then Rick Carlisle's failure to inbounds the ball or call timeout so it can be inbounded at the half court. It was just a monumental collapse, not just by the players, but by their head coach as well.
So my thought process on the fouling thing, and I know LeBron, he's to me, he's the greatest person of revisionist history. See, I told you this is why we do this, but I never think to foul on a offensive inbounding under, like, if you're in the position to be able to chuck up a shot in that area, I don't want to leave that in the ref's hands. I don't want to foul at that point. Now, if you're inbounding the ball from the other end and you can foul before they reach half court, right, not shooting motion, yeah, I'm all about fouling. But in that scenario, when Jaylen Brown's in that corner and he's kind of double clutching the ball, if he goes to foul him and Jaylen Brown throws his arms up as if he was shooting at the same time, maybe I'm the only person in America that's okay with allowing Jaylen Brown to hit he's 0 for 3 on the night shooting threes, to hit a double clutch 3-pointer with hands in his face to tie the game. Like, I wouldn't have fouled there, right? Maybe I'm wrong, and I get it. Like, I'm not going to be LeBron. I'm not going to be like, see, this is why I would have did this.
Right.
But like, I wouldn't have fouled him there. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just my 2 cents on it. But I never believe in fouling when you're inbounding the basketball on the offensive end, right? I believe in fouling if you have to go coast to coast, you have to go across the court. Right. But maybe if you're going away from the basket, right? Like if you could set up a defensive rotation to make a player go towards half court to catch the ball and you can foul him and it's very obvious he's not shooting. But my biggest fear is the moment you reach in the foul, that guy throws his arms up like he's shooting, and we've seen in this NBA playoffs some crazy calls be made. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have fouled there. And then, listen, you want to take shots at Carlisle? I'm right there with you. I think he outcoached Missoula the whole game, except the final minute of the fourth and overtime. And if you look at the last play of the game, of regulation, not of the game, how Tyrese Halliburton is just dribbling the ball out and gets no shot, throwing it off the backboard. That can't be your play. That can't be. You guys have to know 117, or whatever the score was at the time. We're going to run this. We're going to get this. And I don't care who gets the shot up. I don't care if it's Halliburton, Siakam. I don't care if it's Nembhard, who it is. What I care about is you get an attempt at the basket, and Halliburton just, I don't know. It was embarrassing. I couldn't stand the way he handled that in that last shot. And what were your thoughts on the Halliburton, the last possession? Now, you didn't have a bad game. Halliburton played pretty well. It's actually one of his best games of the playoff series. But I hated the way he handled the end.
Yeah, I thought he was terrific up until the very end of the game. There was another possession before that where Drew Holiday was bodying him up, and he just literally let the ball just bounce off his leg and go out of bounds. Like that was an unforced turnover. I mean, I almost think that Indiana got too comfortable because I think they felt like they could get whatever they wanted offensively against Boston. Like, I know Boston has a reputation of being a very good defensive team. Indiana, as you watch that game, they never felt like they couldn't get a good shot every time they came down court, which makes it even more bizarre, the late game situation with Halliburton, because you can't tell me they went into a timeout and they said, well, this is what we're going to do. You're just going to get the ball and try to make something happen. We're not going to run anything, no actions off the ball, where nobody's going to set a screen. You're just going to go ISO and make something happen. Like, if that was the play, that's horrible. That's horrible late game execution. Like, both teams are in the penalty. You could just attack the basket. Maybe you forced the refs to make a call, but anything other than that heave that he threw at the end of the game, like they had that game. And I felt like when they went into overtime, they no longer had the game. Like, think about this. Tatum he's stuck on 26 points. He's 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter. And then he has 10 points in the third quarter. But if Indiana closes that game out as they should have, the story isn't Jason Tatum scored 10 points in overtime. The story would have been Jason Tatum was 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter and Boston lost. It's a funny thing how things can swing around that quickly and the narrative switches that fast.
Oh, I mean, do you know a game that reminds me of like so much? The Miami Heat versus San Antonio Spurs when LeBron missed the game tying 3 in the Ray Allen save game and they go into overtime. And the narrative after the game was LeBron James and then Ray Allen hitting that 3. But if they did not get that rebound, the narrative would have been LeBron James misses another clutch shot down the stretch. And I agree with you 100% with the Jason Tatum thing. I think Tatum, and I've said this throughout the playoffs to anybody who listen. I said it on Wire to Wire. I've said it on here before. When the Boston Celtics need a big shot, it normally doesn't come from Jason Tatum. It's Derek White. And by the way, playoff Jrue earned his salary last night. Jrue Holiday was the most efficient player on the basketball court, and he was good on both ends. And when you look at, and that's to me what makes that Boston team so tough. That's why I picked them to win the NBA Finals before the season started. And they're going to get Kristaps back soon. When you have Jrue Holiday going 10 for 16 for 28 points and being up the best player on the other team, I don't know, man. I like that. I'm okay with that. That's playoff Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday played 48 minutes last night. He showed up when it mattered, and I love that. I do want to give credit where credit's due. It seems to me like every playoff series that we're in, TJ McConnell makes an impact in the game. I thought he was very good last night again. Every time that I felt Indiana was reeling, I felt like TJ McConnell came down and made a big shot or a big pass. Like, I feel like the moment's never too big for him. And for a guy that small, for him to come up that big, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a TJ McConnell fan because he's a guy that I never thought would make it in the NBA. And like, if you listen to JJ Redick's comments the other day about TJ McConnell, I felt the same way. He was super emotional after his last college game because that might have been his last game ever. Like, he did not take for granted making the NBA. And I think TJ's made the most out of every one of his appearances in the playoffs. Obi Toppin continues to be a very good 6th, 7th man for Indiana. I love the depth of that team.
Yeah, I'm looking at Toppin and I'm thinking, like, and the Knicks just wanted to let this guy go. Didn't want him, no interest at all. Like, but okay, there it is. Look, I think Indiana by far is the deeper team. And when I look at Boston, I don't want to sound like I don't think Jason Tatum's a star or a superstar. But can it be true that he can be a superstar and yet I don't really trust him in late game situations? Yeah. Like I believe that Tatum is the guy that carries you through the first, second, and third quarter, and he will make some big shots. But I also believe that in late game situations, your star, it's okay to take a jump shot or attack from the perimeter if you got it going. But I would much rather my star be aggressive than Tatum is more finesse all the way through. Like, late in the game, you can't take that contested step back. You don't need that. There was a rebound that he got in the paint, and rather than just go up strong, he shot a step back in the paint and just he's a lot of things, but you wouldn't call Jason Tatum a dog. He's not. He's not a dog. Jaylen Brown's a dog. Jrue Holiday's a dog. Derek White's a dog. TJ McConnell's a dog. Those kind of guys, they're going to go after it. I don't dislike Jason Tatum, and I kind of root for the guy, honestly, because I feel like if he doesn't win it all this year, that honeymoon period that he's had with the media, it'll end, and then he'll become the guy. He will get that treatment that guys like James Harden get. even a great player like Chris Paul gets. They're going to say, like, yeah, Jason Tatum's great. And he's been in the conference finals umpteen times, has won a title. The question would then be, can Jason Tatum be the best player on a title-winning team?
I mean, the answer should be yes, right? That Boston Celtics team is built perfectly. You give all the credit to the general manager, but look, if you were building a team to get Jason Tatum a title as the best player on a championship team, this has to be the team, right? This has to be the team. But for whatever reason, my brain told me before the season to pick the Boston Celtics to win it all. But my eyes are telling me now that whoever wins the Western Conference Finals is going to beat them in the finals. I just feel like both of those teams have the guy. Like down the stretch, who do you want? Ant, Luka, or Tatum? And I think the answer is resounding Ant or Luka. I don't think it's ever going to be Tatum.
I would take Ant and Luka over Tatum in a heartbeat. I think I would take SGA over Tatum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And by the way, this isn't one of those things. Oh, so Mo, you're saying you wouldn't want Tatum on your team? I'm not saying that.
Okay, well, because we have time, can I just, because you're the NBA guy, we're gonna play GM for 1 second, right? And this is unprompted, but I love playing these this or that. Would you take Jason Tatum or? I did this with Shally a few years ago. Video kind of went viral. I'm gonna ask you now, next 5 years, Jason Tatum or if you're building a franchise. I'll give you 7 players. I got to figure out 7 right off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'll start, in my opinion, easy, right? Based off everything that happened with his injuries and his issues with the law. I think this is easy, right? If you don't want to come off as a Jason Tatum hater, I think we'll take Jason Tatum or Ja Morant.
I would take Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I would too. I wouldn't have said that 2 years ago before all the issues. I thought Ja was on an ascension to be better than Jason Tatum, but I agree with you. Now you said it already, but I'm going to ask it again. Jason Tatum or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
I'm taking Shai. I'm taking SGA all day. I just think he's got that it. I mean, you can tell he wants it. They lost to a terrific Dallas team, but he was a monster throughout the series. Like, it wasn't because of him. I make no excuses. He just didn't have a second guy to come along with him, but I would definitely take SGA over Tatum.
Okay. We'll start Jason Tatum or not Luka. Ant Edwards.
I'm taking Ant. That's easy.
I completely agree with you. So now I'm going to start getting a little bit, I'm going to do my best to get a little bit controversial. Give Jason Tatum next 5 years or Paolo Banchero.
Next 5 years.
Yes, next 5 years. Jason Tatum or Paolo Banchero.
I'm going to take Paolo. I'm going to take Paolo Banchero. I know Jason Tatum's better than him right now, but you said next 5 years.
Yes.
I'm going to take Paolo. I think he's not far from being where Tatum is right now.
I don't think I've disagreed with you with one yet. So I'll go a little bit of an older player, a guy that might be on the downslope. I don't think he's on the downslope. I think they need the right team about him. But next 5 years, you taking Jason Tatum or Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Ooh. I'm taking Giannis. I know people can point to the holes in his game, and yet he's still the most dominant force in the NBA right now. He's a junior Shaq, if you will. I'm going to take Giannis. Maybe his future isn't with Milwaukee, but I don't think he's done winning titles.
Okay. Well, just for my Knicks fan in the chat, I think Knicks fans got really carried away. Look, you're not finding a bigger Villanova Knicks. Like I love the Villanova players on the Knicks. I'm a Villanova guy, right? But Tatum or Brunson, I think this is rather easy, but I'll ask it to you anyway.
I'm taking Tatum. And just for the record, I'm a huge Brunson fan. I've been following him and Hart and all those guys since college. I was one of the guys, and maybe I'm the only guy, I actually thought that Brunson should make first team all NBA over Giannis this season. I did. He probably won't, but that's how highly I thought of what he did this season. But if you're talking about the full resume instead of a sample size, I would still take Tatum over Brunson.
And this is the last one I have. And this to me is what I call aging out or aging up for the next 5 years. Keep in mind, he's 36 years old.
Oh, I know.
You want Jason Tatum or Kevin Durant?
Is that, do I want him as the GM or do I want him as the GM of the Celtics?
No, you're the GM. You have a franchise. You have a 5-year contract. You can sign Tatum to the 5-year deal, or you can sign Durant to the 5-year deal.
I'm signing Tatum to the 5-year deal.
I agree.
I love KD, and he's aging greatly, as is LeBron, but he is 36.
Listen, completely agree with you. That brings us into our next series. That brings us into the series that I've been calling for 2 weeks. I call this series the next ones. It's Anthony Edwards versus Luka Doncic. And I could not be more thrilled to watch this series. Like, I am going to be, as soon as Wire to Wire is finished tonight, I will be locked in. I will be DVRing the game so I could watch it, speed through the commercials, and I'm pretty sure I can get done the game and be able to watch it live while it's happening. I think the game starts at 8 or 9 tonight. What time does it start?
I want to say I think it's
8:30. Perfect. 8:30. I'll only be 30 minutes behind. I'll catch up by halftime. So you got the series tonight. Anthony Edwards versus Luka Doncic. But that's not the whole series. There's Kyrie, there's Kat. Listen to the way Joker said it. There's Mike Conley Jr., one of the most underrated players in the NBA by Joker's terms. You got Rudy Gobert, who, by the way, Draymond Green loves to call out on this podcast. I get you don't like him, but you make it very obvious that you do not like Rudy Gobert. But who do you like in this series? Preview the series for us, Mo. What's your prediction on the series? And I'll be honest with you guys, I still haven't made mine. I think I said I picked one of the teams to go to the finals already, but that was last round. But I haven't made my prediction on this series yet because I've been so excited about it. Like, this is my favorite series of the whole postseason. I'm hoping it lives up to the hype.
I am too. So I'm split, right? Because obviously, I think we made our picks before, and I thought whoever won Timberwolves, Denver was going to the finals, and I thought that was going to be a 7-game series. It was a 7-game series, except I got it wrong. Give the T-Wolves credit. They did something that I maybe have never been done. They beat the team with home court advantage 3 times at home. I've never seen that. And they didn't just beat them, they beat the brakes off of them every time they were in Denver for whatever reason. I don't understand that. But I digress. Look, I think when you look at this series, it's going to be about matchups. I love how Anthony Edwards said right after they beat Denver, he said, we got Dallas next, and I got Kyrie. First thing out of his mouth, I got Kyrie. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm sure he's thinking, okay, I'll put Jaden McDaniels on Luka. They don't have scoring bigs. Dallas doesn't have scoring bigs. They have rim runners, so that means that Gobert is going to be able to hang around the basket more. That is different already. The question, I think, with Dallas is, are they going to get enough balance like they did in the last series? Because P.J. Washington, he came up so big from them making timely shots. If they're going to have a chance to win this series, he's got to have a better series, I think, than he had versus OKC. Look, both teams are actually very good defensively. Dallas made a lot of moves that actually turned their team around. They're a solid defensive team. But if you look at what Minnesota can do, when they lock down your perimeter players, they can choke your offense out. That said, even though he's probably one of the least athletic players in all the NBA, Luka is one of the hardest covers ever. And because you can't speed him up, you can't stop him from getting to his spots. And he is deceptively strong. So I'm going to say this. I think it's a 7-game series. And I said it yesterday on the morning show, so I'm going to be consistent. I think this is Luka's time. I think the Mavs pull off an upset. I think the Mavs win the series.
I don't even know how much of an upset it is. I look at this as like one of the.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't know how much of an upset it is because I look at this series and I'm so perplexed by it, right? because there's so many different ways that you can go about it. And I think coaching matters in this series. I think the way that, like you talked about, Dallas doesn't have any interior scorers, but what they do have is they have a PJ Washington who can stretch the court and won 2 games because the Thunder decided they wanted to run at Luka and run at Kyrie, and PJ Washington hit the open 3, and he did a great job of doing it. With that being said, right, like I don't know who on Minnesota's team can be able to stick PJ Washington on the perimeter. You're moving Cat or you're moving Gobert outside of the lane by having PJ Washington in the corner. Now, Cat will probably be the guy that draws but when you take one of those 7-footers out of the lane, and PJ Washington is 100% more athletic than Karl Anthony Towns, that's a mismatch. Yeah. That's a mismatch. So I think that Ant will have a little bit tougher time rim running with Gobert basically roaming the middle, because I don't think that, for one bit, Gafford scares anyone as far as being a scorer. So I think that Ant will have a little bit more difficult of a time. But with that being said, I think Minnesota will get whatever they want in the paint. I think they'll get whatever they want in the paint. And you know the question I keep asking myself, right? I picked Minnesota to go to the finals when they were down 3-2 to Denver. I said they're going to win games 6 and 7, and I have them playing the Boston Celtics in the finals. That was my prediction on Wire to Wire because it happened right before game 6. And I got to stay with it. But I'll say this, right? I don't know who I trust more with the ball in their hands with 5 seconds left on the clock, Anthony Edwards or Luka. I think the answer is Luka. And I think that if there's an opportunity to be able to hit a big shot down the stretch, I want the ball in Luka's hands over anyone in this entire series. And Kyrie has already shown you he's got ice water in his veins, making 3-pointers on the biggest stage. I'm still going to go Minnesota because that's what I predicted, and I'm not going to go back on it. But, man, I am telling you, this is the most excited I've been for a non-Philadelphia 76ers playoff series ever.
There's some amazing matchups.
I think it's Minnesota in 7, though.
No, look, and like I said, when the teams are that evenly matched, that's why when I picked Denver to beat the Timberwolves in 7, I don't say 7 because I think Denver is clearly better. I say 7 acknowledging how good Minnesota was. And I feel the same way about this series. I'm going to lean towards the Mavs, but I know what the T-Wolves are. And you're right. Look, there's so many unique matchups. You talked about how you would want Luka having the ball late in the game or late in the game. I'd be perfectly okay with Kyrie with the ball late in the game. Because he's one of those guys that can make something out of nothing. This might be not just the most touted series. I'm hoping it lives up to what it could be. Not just a 7-game series, but an incredible series all the way around. Like I hope it's a better series than Nuggets T-Wolves. Even though that was a 7-game series, it didn't feel like it to me. I don't know how to explain it.
Terrible. 5 of the games were awful. Like they were just blowouts. I agree with you 100%. I think this series has the ability to be a 7-game series with 6 of them being within 5 points.
Right. That was it, right? So every game Minnesota won pretty much. They didn't just blow the doors off of them. They held Denver to under like 90 points multiple times. They held one game to 70 points. Like 7-game series, but it's the worst. It didn't feel like a 7-game series. I hope this series lives up to the hype, and I think it will.
I want to reply to Kittrell. I am not underselling Gafford and Lively. I'm not. You couldn't tell me that there's not a distinct advantage for Minnesota in the paint. Like, don't undersell Cat and Gobert. And by the way, Cat and Gobert are on my list of like 10 least favorite players in the NBA. Like, I don't like either one of them.
Right.
I think Cat is soft and awkward. Although I think the press conference he had with Ant was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. But I think he's soft and awkward, and he's had a huge rivalry with Joel Embiid, who's a 76er. So I'm not a huge Cat guy, but I love me some Ant Edwards. I love some Mike Conley Jr. I love Jaden McDaniels. Like, there's a lot of guys in this series, especially on Minnesota, that I like. I'm not underselling Gafford and Lively. It's just Gafford and Lively versus Gobert and Towns. It's definitely an advantage for Minnesota.
I agree. Not just that. Let's not forget about Naz Reid as well. I think what people forget is when you have Cat and Naz Reid, that's actually their second and third leading scorers. Then there's Mike Conley. Then there's Jaden McDaniels. Minnesota's very unique. I'm not underselling Lively or Gafford, but I am saying because they're rim runners, I expect Minnesota to dominate the boards. I think Minnesota, even when they don't shoot well, I think they're going to get a lot of second chance opportunities. So I still think it's a close series because what I expect is Luka will handle and control the pace of the game. Luka will walk it up. And it's strange because when you think of Minnesota and you think of Ant and how explosive he is, they like to walk it up too. They don't run. They will run when there's an opportunity, but Minnesota is a half court set offensive team. That's how they play. So it is going to be a great chess match. You said it early that coaching will play a big part. If it really comes down to coaching, then your pick is going to be better than mine because I think the Timberwolves have a better coach.
I do want to. We're 32 minutes in, and obviously NBA is the biggest topic right now. We have two more topics, NBA, and then we're going to move on to NFL. But LeBron James made headwaves last night on social media, saying that he would foul. This is why I would foul every single time up 3. Is LeBron right? Do you agree with LeBron's sentiment? Would you foul every time if you were a head coach in the NBA? When is the time where you foul up 3?
I think it's very strategic. And you brought up a great point in the situation last night, Pacers, Celtics. If Brown is already in his shooting motion and you go over there and try to stop him and he just throws his arms up, then he's going to the foul line for 3. I get what you're saying. I agree. In a perfect world, if you got to take it full court, I'm fouling you. You're not even going to get past the half court and I'm fouling you. But I disagree with LeBron. It's easy for him to say that, standing on the sidelines. But in that particular situation, when Brown caught the ball, I think you're right. It would be crazy for Siakam to foul him then. And by the way, that was probably one of the hardest 3-point shots I've ever seen because he had to shoot it with his legs. He had to double clutch it. Like, that was not an easy shot. If you ask Jaylen Brown to make that shot again, I'm sure he couldn't do it. So I think Pascal Siakam made the right decision. He just made an amazing shot.
You know what it reminded me of? And I know it wasn't the same shot, but it reminded me of UNC versus Villanova when Marcus Page made that shot versus Villanova to tie the game, that double clutch 3-pointer.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that because you never knew when Brown was going up with that ball. And I know it wasn't a double clutch in the air, but it was definitely an awkward shooting motion.
Right.
That when Jaylen Brown put that ball. I don't foul every time either. I foul every time when you have to go on the other end of the court. When you have to come from underneath your basket, and I'll foul before half court line. When you get to the other side of the half court line, I'm not fouling. I'm not, because it's so easy for a ref to dictate the game and say he was in the motion of shooting. Any logical NBA player can just throw up their arms and get that call shooting 3 points. All right, so I just kind of wanted your take on that, Mo. And another thing I want your take on, and maybe I'm being a little bit naive. Maybe I'm being a little bit crazy. Bronny James keeps jumping up the NBA prospect rankings. He's the most bet on player to go number 1 overall. There's honest scouts that said that they don't even look at him as a second round talent right now. I've never seen a wave of a player going from not being drafted to being the most bet on guy to go number 1. And we know why. Some teams will think he's going to go number 1. They're trying to lure LeBron James. I would like your thoughts on Bronny. I would like your thoughts on his ascension in the rankings as far as draft prospect. And do you think it would be smart for a team to draft Bronny with the expectation they can either get LeBron there or trade Bronny to the Lakers for a strong piece. Like, hey, listen, you might not keep Bronny and you might not be able to lure LeBron there, but you might be able to trade Bronny to the Lakers for like a Rui Hachimura or a guy on that Lakers team that's, I don't know, like, listen, LeBron goes, I'm not playing unless we're playing with Bronny, so go get him. Who are you getting for him? Your thoughts on Bronny's rise in the rankings, and what do you think will ultimately happen?
So the rise in the rankings, I'm as surprised as anybody. I don't know how many people actually watch USC basketball. I actually watch a lot of USC basketball, and what I can tell you is that their starting lineup, especially their backcourt, it's not very good. They're not that talented team. I say that to say this: he couldn't beat those guys out. He couldn't start over them, and they're not being highly touted in the draft at all. What I know about Bronny for sure is this: yes, he's athletic. He's got a 40+ vertical, and he's very quick. And after that, I don't know what else to say. I know they show him doing drills, and he all of a sudden he has a better 3-point shot, but he is shooting those threes in drills. Those aren't games. You're not being guarded. It's a completely different thing. And I want to remind people, 40-inch vertical or not, he's 6'1". He's a 6'1" guard. And somebody asked me to give a player comp for Bronny, and I said, if everything goes right and someone drafts him and they truly draft him because they think he can be an NBA caliber player, who do I think he could be? And what I said is he could be Chris Dunn minus the injuries. If you remember Chris Dunn was known for being a great defender, and his body just broke down early in his career, and he just never got it back. I think Bronny can be a really good point of the attack defender. The question will be, though, if he's a good defender at the point of attack, will he be a liability on the other side of the ball? I think he's a project. I think he's a guy that if you're going to draft him, you can draft him with a second-round pick, and you can put him in the G League or give him one of those those separate contracts where he's in the main roster in the G League. But I think he's a project. I watched enough of him to know I'm not wasting a first-round pick on him. I'm definitely not wasting a high second-round pick on him. If I think the Lakers have the 55th pick. If he's still around and Rob wants to please LeBron, yeah, go ahead. Take him with the 55th pick. My instincts tell me this, though. Knowing LeBron, and I'm sure you know this, he's probably already told Pelinka, don't wait to take Bronny with the 55th pick. Don't he's not going to be there. And LeBron might be right. But if Rob Pelinka takes this, I think they have the 17th pick. You're not going to spend the 17th pick on Bronny. Let me say that. Let me rewind. I wouldn't spend the 17th pick on Bronny. I'm not Rob Pelinka. I don't have Jeannie Buss staring at me going, let's make LeBron happy at all cost. I don't think Rob will draft him, but I will not put it out of the realm of possibilities, because every time somebody says, well, LeBron never has his fingerprints on these kind of things, he doesn't like to give them. He always likes to get involved in those kind of things. You absolutely know he and Rich Paul have already told Rob Pelinka, draft Bronny. He and Rich Paul, through backdoor channels or whatever, have already told a group of other teams, don't bother drafting Bronny because I'm not coming there. Like I've heard the rumors of the Utah Jazz are highly, they look at Bronny as a viable draft pick. And I know LeBron James is never going to play in Utah. So if you know what I'm saying? Like if Bronny goes to Utah, maybe he goes there to get traded to the Lakers, but I know LeBron's not going to Utah. I know LeBron's not going to Atlanta. Like there's certain teams you can write off right away. Like if the Pistons drafted Bronny, LeBron's not playing for the Pistons. Like there's only so many things he's going to do for his son, because LeBron still wants to compete for titles.
So Cottrell said the player comp is Davion Mitchell, and I've seen that too on ESPN. I don't think he's anywhere near the defender Davion Mitchell is. Just be clear. And I also don't think he's a good shooter. So he wasn't a good shooter in college, but he had one good day in front of in drills that no one's seen on camera. We've seen him hitting 3 open threes in a gym Like Ben Simmons can hit open threes in the gym. We've seen those videos.
That's true.
You know what's funny? I think if everything goes right, I think he's a mix between a DeAnthony Melton and a Deuce McBride. Like, I think he can develop an open 3-point shot like Deuce McBride did for the New York Knicks or DeAnthony Melton, but no one looks at them as like snipers. I think his best attribute is he's a good defender versus smaller point guards. I want to be clear when I say that. His best attribute is he is a good, not great, defend. Like Davion Mitchell was great, good defender versus smaller point guards. Like you line him up versus Luka, Luka will back him down into the lane and literally just bully him. So what you're drafting him to hopefully stick De'Aaron Fox in game 64. Like I don't know. I don't think Bronny will ever be an all-star in the NBA. I don't see it.
No.
I think that everything has to go right, and he could be a rotational player. And I think the only reason, and this bothers me, the only reason he's getting any media and draft potential is because of his father. And if that's not, little league, my kid bats third and plays shortstop, even though he's not better than the other kids, I don't know.
I think you nailed it. I think if his dad wasn't named LeBron James, you wouldn't hear all these, well, I've got him going up draft boards rapidly. Like those things wouldn't be happening if his dad wasn't who he was. He didn't have the connections or the power that Clutch Sports have. And I fully believe that Rich Paul and company are working back channels and they're pumping him up to be better than what he is as well. They are. I think Bronny can be a functional player in the NBA. I love what you said about the Deuce McBride comparison. Yes, he could be a rotational player. He's not going to be a star. He's not going to be an elite player. I think he can be a good rotational role player. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's his lot in life. But this idea that he's going to be drafted in the first round, that just seems insane to me.
All right, well, let's move on to NFL for the final couple segments of the show. Ryan Leaf, and by the way, who puts a microphone in front of Ryan Leaf at this point? But Ryan Leaf said that Sean Payton has ego problems and that the Denver GM needs to be fired for the moves that he made the last 2 seasons. Leaf says Payton has the worst kind of ego that an NFL head coach can have. What are your thoughts on Ryan Leaf? And I'll give mine in a lot of details. But yeah,
I'll shorten it. I mean, first of all, it's Ryan Leaf. Check the source. Like, who is he to make those statements and to make those judgments? I still can go back on YouTube and look at a video where he's in an interview and he goes on a rant that's just it's bananas, and he's going to judge someone. Secondly, on the substance, I don't think Sean Payton has made bad moves. I think he came into a situation, and we all know this, Russell Wilson wasn't his guy. It's as simple as that. He was already he was already there. He was already in place, but he wasn't his guy. So Sean Payton was like, I got to get my guy. I got to be able to draft my guy. This guy's not my guy. It's that cut and dry. And he did what a lot of head coaches would do. If you're not my guy, I'm going to move off of you and draft my guy. So I have no problem with the moves that Sean Payton has made.
So I'll be very clear when I say this, right? It takes a very special, it's a very thin line between, nice way I'll put it. It's a very thin line between Kyle Shanahan and Chip Kelly. And what I mean by that is you have to be confident enough to be Kyle Shanahan and to have your offensive scheme be the reason that your team moves the football and the scheme above all. That's what Kyle Shanahan does. And then Chip Kelly, who just got rid of everybody in Philadelphia. LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin. I wanted Sam Bradford to run my scheme. He wanted it all to be about Chip Kelly, and that's egotistical, right? So it's a thin line between Chip Kelly and Kyle Shanahan, 2 offensive-minded guys that do it very similar. It's just Kyle's on the side of my system works and I can plug and play, and Chip's on the side of I was too reliant on my system that I didn't have the players to be able to make it work. So with Sean Payton, I think the jury's out, right? And if you want to be a projection expert right now and say that they're going to fail and Bo Nix is not the guy, in this draft, the 5 quarterbacks that came out in the first 13 picks, was it 6? Was it 5? It was 6 quarterbacks. In the first 14 picks, the biggest comp to Drew Brees, a poor man's Drew Brees, was Bo Nix. An accurate, somewhat athletic quarterback that lacks big arm ability, that can manage the game and move the chains. That's what Bo Nix did in college for 17 years. He played everywhere, Auburn and Oregon. But with that being said, I think the jury's out. I want to see what they do. They're in a very, very tough division. I think Sean Payton is in a really tough spot. You got to go against Harbaugh and the Chargers with Justin Herbert. You got to go against Reed and the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. And we need to not stop selling what Antonio Pierce did with that Raiders team last year short. Because I will tell you one thing. The Raiders might not be a great football team, and they're not. Like, their depth chart does not say they're a good football team. But I will guarantee you that team goes out and plays tough and plays hard for their head coach, Antonio Pierce. So I think that Peyton's in a really, really tough spot here. I don't take anything that Ryan Leaf says. And I think it's kind of crazy how we're writing the book on a guy. And I've said this for years: marry the coach to the quarterback, marry the coach to the quarterback. Russell Wilson was there. Sean Payton came in, hated the way Russ ran his offense. Drafted his quarterback. Now we give him 2 years to see if he can develop Bo Nix and see what happens through that. And then you can write a story saying Denver's GM needs to be fired. Sean Payton is this, Sean Payton is that. Then we could start talking about the potential of, did Drew Brees really make Sean Payton? But this is way too early. We're talking about a Super Bowl winning coach that's won a lot of football games as a head coach. I'm not writing the chapter on Sean Payton as the worst kind of ego NFL coach can have until I see him destroy things over in Denver. I haven't seen that yet.
I agree. And like you said, marry the quarterback to the coach. I think he went out and got his guy. You got a window to go ahead and develop him and see what he becomes. I'm with you. I can't judge Sean Payton off of his time with Russell Wilson because he never really bought into Russell Wilson. He wasn't his guy, flat out. I have to see Sean Payton, and maybe this is Sean Payton's ego saying, I can bring in a guy that's like Brees, I can coach him up, and I can kind of recapture that magic again. And maybe he can. I don't know that he can't. So let's see what he does, because he is a Super Bowl winning coach who's won so many games. He deserves that kind of respect. And for a guy like Ryan Leaf to be the guy that's going to be the final judge on somebody like Sean Payton, that's just funny to me. That of all the people that you could talk to about Sean Payton, why a microphone got to Ryan Leaf that blows my mind.
Couldn't agree with you more. I do want to move over to Pittsburgh. Justin Fields says he's ready to compete for QB1. The Steelers are saying Russell Wilson is QB1. Is there any chance you don't think Russell Wilson starts week 1? And what are the odds that Fields sees this season? What are the odds we see Fields if the Steelers are 500 or better?
If they're 500, I think you see Fields sooner than later. I think because I think Tomlin is still old school. Unless Russ is god awful in preseason, Russ is going to start. But I think that knowing Mike Tomlin, if they get off to a rocky start, I don't think he'll hesitate if he knows that Justin Fields is ready to go. And I think once Justin Fields becomes QB1, he will be QB1 for years to come. That's what I think of Justin Fields as a talent. And I don't want to knock Russ because he's had a great career, but he's at the end and he's at a different stage of his career. I don't know if he can handle being a backup, but if they get off to a rocky start, he will be the backup for the rest of this season.
So here's the way I look at it, right? I think this season shapes up so poorly for Justin Fields that, and I'm never going to root for an injury for Russell Wilson, but like I think the only way he really logically sees the field before week 12 or 13 is an injury to Russell Wilson. I don't want that. I think that's a mistake on Pittsburgh's end. But the way this schedule shapes up for Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh's last 9 games or 8 games are awful. They're terrible. But their first 8 games, where they normally don't perform very well, they're not normally great starters, they're great finishers, outside the one season where they went like 11-0 and completely fell apart after the Washington Commanders game. I think that Russell Wilson will, I think you won't hear about Justin Fields a ton the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. And the way it lines up to me is real simple, right? You have the Falcons at Atlanta week 1. There's no edge rush. I think that Russell Wilson will look good in that football game. You play the Broncos week 2, who have literally gotten rid of everybody. The Chargers week 3, who've gotten rid of almost everybody. The Colts week 4. The Cowboys in Pittsburgh week 5. The Raiders week 6. Stop me when you hear an elite defense. I mean, maybe the Cowboys, maybe, but you're playing them in your backyard. I think that Justin Fields is in a bad situation. I think Justin Fields is the better quarterback. He's the guy I would start. And I think that this whole offseason has been a terrible offseason. I think the Chicago Bears goofed what they were doing with Justin Fields. And then they gave him away for next to nothing, to where a team could potentially have him as a very inexpensive backup quarterback, a la Kenny Pickett to Philadelphia. I'm perplexed by this. I think Justin Fields should be the starter. Nothing against Russ, but I also think Russ should be starting in the NFL too. You look at 32 teams, and I think the Steelers have 2 quarterbacks that are in the top 32. Whereas you're going to walk into a season with Jacoby Brissett starting for New England. You're going to walk into a season with Gardner Minshew starting for the Raiders. You're going to walk into an NFL season where I think Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are better than Will Levis, who's going to start for the Tennessee Titans. There's a lot of teams in the NFL. Do you not think that Justin Fields or Russell Wilson could be better starting options for the New York Giants than Daniel Jones? And you look across the NFL, and I just think that these are 2 of the top 32 quarterbacks. And it's unfortunate that one of them isn't going to be starting every game this year.
Yeah. So you don't think Fields will see the field this year, like beyond an injury? Like if Russ,
I think if Russ is
not injured,
I think he'll see it later, Mo. I think he'll see it when they start getting the crap kicked out of him by Cleveland, and then you throw him into an offense in November when they got to play Cleveland, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Kansas City. That schedule is insane down the stretch. Insane. Like, dude, at Philly, at Kansas City, at Cleveland, at Cincinnati. All these games are November, December.
Division games too, right? That's crazy.
God. So I think he'll walk into a situation that's not a winning situation. And hopefully he's placed himself into a contract with someone. Hopefully the Steelers re-sign him, or he goes somewhere where he can be used. But I still have a lot of faith in Justin Fields. Maybe that's just me.
No, I'm with you. I think he's talented. I think he's got that it factor. I still think he's going to end up being the quarterback of the Steelers for the future going forward. I agree with you to start your season out when the back end of that schedule is a murderer's row. It's all division opponents sprinkled in with the Cowboys, or I believe it's the Eagles and another tough team. Like, it's crazy with the Chiefs, right? It's crazy what their schedule looks like. Like, where's the relief? Because you're talking about playing Burrow twice and Lamar twice and the Browns with that defense twice. And then the relief is the Eagles. That's not relief. The depth is not the Chiefs. So that is a tough back end of the schedule.
I'll read it to you real quick. So November 17th, they play the Ravens in Pittsburgh, right? So then on short rest, they have to go to Cleveland to play a Thursday night versus the Browns, who had number 1 defense in football last year. Oh, let's give them a relief. Then they got to go play at Cincinnati. Then they play the Browns again in Pittsburgh. Then they got to play at Philadelphia. Then on short rest, they got to play at Baltimore. And then on short rest again, they're playing the Wednesday night game versus the Chiefs. And then they let's give him a W at the end of the year. We'll give him the Bengals again. Like, what? That is maddening. All right, last two topics. We'll just go through them pretty quick. Devontae Parker is retiring. Your thoughts on Devontae Parker? He signed with the Philadelphia Eagles this offseason. Before he went to OTAs, he's just like, I'm not ready. I don't want to go back. I'm done. I'm calling it a career. Devontae Parker hangs him up.
Okay player. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things where like, man, we need to go back and look at over all the great years. Like he was a guy that was good enough to be in the league. I'll give him that. But he's also one of those guys he's kind of forgettable.
Yeah,
that's 100%. Best way I can put it.
And then T. Higgins wants out of Cincinnati. Where do you think he could be the biggest fit?
Man, he's so talented that I think he has value. Look, I think the Chargers could use him. I think the Bills could use him in a heartbeat. Like I'm wondering why the Bills aren't trying to pursue that like right now and make that happen. Because those are the two teams that jump out at you, San Diego and Buffalo. But everybody's worried about San Diego because they got rid of all their receivers and stuff. I know what Harbaugh is doing because this is what Harbaugh does. He is going to invest everything into his O-line, and he's going to develop a power running game, and it will be a really effective power running game. And right off of that, it's going to make life so much easier for the quarterback. It's going to change everything for him because he will live off a play action pass. I love that Jim Harbaugh wants to instill a physicality to the Chargers. So don't worry about the Chargers. Don't feel sorry for the Chargers. They've got a franchise quarterback and they've got a crazy but brilliant head coach.
So I'll tell you why Buffalo and the Chargers are incorrect. I'm just talking to Cottrell in the chat here. The Chargers are $25 million over the cap still. They have $33 million in dead cap money. T. Higgins wants to get paid. The Bengals aren't paying him. Buffalo has $1.6 million in cap space this year, and Josh Allen's contract's in the middle of his contract, right? So I'm looking for realistic spots for him, right? I think that the New England Patriots are a realistic spot. They have $68 million in cap. They can overpay a receiver and get him with a young quarterback over there in New England. That's realistic. I don't think, well, we can talk about next year's cap too, Cottrell. Cottrell's talking about this year's cap, doesn't matter. When you have $25 million when you're $25 million over the cap, you do realize that does roll over in the next year, Mr. Cottrell. And if we're talking about next year's cap, Buffalo is $6 million over already to next year's cap. So I don't think Buffalo could be a fit for him at all. Now, the Chargers, on the other hand, $52 million next year, but that $25 million is going to roll into next year. So they're only going to have $26 million in cap space. And I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going out and spending that on a wide receiver.
No.
My take would be New England would be the move. They have the most money and they have a young quarterback and they can overpay T. Higgins. I just kind of want to see if anyone else had a different type of perspective. But we're at time. We're at 59 minutes. We keep this show under an hour. Chris should be back tomorrow. We missed him. I'm hoping I did an okay job filling in for him. We talked a lot of NBA. Mo, close us out, my friend.
Thank you guys so much for joining Gene and I this morning. Make sure you check out all the great content that we have to offer at the Wire to Wire Network. Make sure you watch Wire to Wire tonight at the Wire to Wire Network. We appreciate your support, your follows, your subs, your like. Wire to Wire Network, we appreciate you.
Mrs.